All right, you ready?
Ready, Freddy.
Welcome to SABcast the PODcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to SABcast the PODcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sabrina Han. Oh, I almost said Kim. Sabrina Han.
I mean, it's not wrong.
And I'm joined by my good friend, Nina Kim.
Hello.
Yeah, right now we're starting a podcast, and it's just the two of us, but maybe eventually we'll have some other people join us if this becomes more of a regular thing, or more of a popular thing. We just wanted to create a space where we could connect more with each other and also connect with those of you who are listening. If you like the podcast, you can continue following us on whatever podcast site we are uploading this, and /or on my YouTube channel, A World with Sabby. You can follow and subscribe and like all our videos and podcasts there as well. But yeah, we're hoping to make this, as of right now, a monthly thing, and then if we decide to make it a little bit more frequent, then we might move into that. But for now, a monthly thing, and we're just going to talk about our lives, kind of our thoughts and opinions of what's going on in the world, and what's going on in our everyday lives, and just different things. Yeah, I guess before we get started and move into our topic for today, maybe we'll just introduce ourselves a little bit, just give a little intro. So I'm Sabrina Han, used to be Kim, but I am married now. I normally don't forget that I'm Han now, but apparently I did when I was introing. But I am 23 years old, graduated from the University of Washington in 2019, so it's been 2 years of graduating from there with my double major in dance and education. Currently working / running a business. I have a dance studio that I am running, and I'm teaching a bunch of little ones and a little bit older ones. So doing that. Surviving through quarantine with my husband and his family, because we're living in his house, or his parents' house now all together, while we save money for a house. Yeah, so that's kind of happening. But yeah, other than that, I have a wiener dog named Buddy, and I'm very excited for this podcast. A little nervous, but I'm excited for the things we're going to talk about, and hopefully good and fun, interesting things will come out of it.
Yes, thank you for organizing this, and it's an honor to be here. Yeah, my name is Nina Kim. I am also 23 and also graduated from UW, just working now at a clinic. Just a 20-something trying to figure out life, basically. I currently own a cat, and that's a big part of my life. She is. I also recently started dating, and so, yes, that has also been a good and challenging time as well. I don't know what else to... I have 2 older brothers. I grew up playing softball, and now I'm just living with one of those brothers out in Seattle in an apartment. And we're both kind of in the same life stage of figuring out what we wanted to do career-wise and trying to be good young adult people.
Thank you for
Thank you.
joining me. Joining us, I should say, for those who are listening.
Oh, yes. This is weird to think that we have an audience, even though we're just chilling, talking to each other on Zoom.
Yeah.
but it's cool. I like the idea of just including people into the conversation, even if passively they get. No. I like the idea of podcasts because you gotta listen in on combos you probably would never be a part of. Yeah, and join in on spaces like that. In this case, our space being that of Korean Americans in a exciting time in our lives.
So yeah, this is our first podcast, and we actually tried, recording a podcast before, but it didn't. We had some technical difficulties, so we're kind of doing a little redo here today. But our topic is a little bit more serious than we had originally anticipated for our first podcast. But I think because of all the different things happening right now, and this being a space where we want to be able to freely talk and share and be there for each other and those of you who are listening. I think even though it is a heavier topic to start with, it's still a very important topic to talk about. So we still want to talk about it, and we'll also, in later podcasts, we'll have time for things that are a little bit more lighthearted and whatnot. So, yeah, today our topic is, in general, we're kind of just want to talk about being an Asian American or an Asian in the United States. I guess more specifically because we're a woman, being Asian American woman. And the reason we were talking about this today is just because with recent events of like the Atlanta shooting and a lot of other racist acts and hate towards Asians and Asian American right now, we wanted to discuss and just talk about how we're feeling and our thoughts and opinions on what's going on.
And full disclaimer, we are definitely not experts on the topic. We're just, people who are in it and trying to share in our experiences with others. So, yeah, we don't want people to start quoting us, but just be able to feel less alone through this podcast and just being here with us. Yeah.
Yeah, the first topic is, I guess, just, I'm sure everyone, or most of you, hopefully everyone has heard the unfortunate news that on March 16th of this year, 2021, there was a shooting in Atlanta, or in the Atlanta area in Georgia. So 3 different spas or massage parlors were, I don't know, how should I say it? Were targeted by a 21-year-old white man who went and he shot and killed eight different people. And from the news, I've heard and kind of read 6 of those 8 are Asian, or 6 of the 8 are women who happen to also be Asian, but are all, I know one of them for sure is white, but I'm not sure if that's 8th person is also white or Asian. I think
it's a male Asian, but yeah, maybe not actually. The main focus of the news has been on the 6 Asian women, but it's usually like the 6 Asian women are named and then the 2 others, so it's like, I don't know why it's hard to even get all the facts from the news.
Yeah, even just getting the facts, like just trying to find like different articles or seeing posts on like social media, everything's like been a little bit different, and how they're even just saying like the places that were targeted, like spas or massage parlors, or like just using the different names are just so different. And then for a while they were just saying four of the people were Korean. That's what they mentioned, and then later they were saying six Asian women, and then 8 people, and just like the numbers and just how they were describing the people were just very. You had to really search and find all the information.
It's a heavy topic, hard to approach, but that's why we're here. To try and attempt to approach this. But yeah, I guess just your initial, I don't know, thoughts on it when you first heard about it, and then after you did more research, how, like, reading more of the reports and things on it, how it, like, because at least for me, it really affected me in terms of how I also was able to frame it when I did more research. Because, like, the initial just report of the shooting was kind of bland, is a bad way to put it, but, like, they just said 21-year-old shoots 3 spots or something, like. But then the more you research it, the more, like, nuanced and, like, there's more overlying, like, at least people are framing it to seem a lot more, racially motivated. And even when the shooter himself said it wasn't, it's like, you can't just do something like this and say it's not racially motivated. So people are almost like, reading between the lines, and that's been eye-opening and also kind of disturbing too for me. But how have you also been processing that?
Yeah, I think, like, how I first heard of it is was I have my small groups, my life groups on Tuesday evenings. And so after we had our life group and just us ladies, like, talking, one of the members, she, like, posted in our chats, like, an article about the shooting. And at first I just, like, kind of saw the headline. I didn't even open it. I was just like, oh, I can't believe that happened. But kind of like you were saying in the beginning, like, oh, it's just kind of like, it just kind of went over my head a little bit, just because, like, it's like, oh, another shooting, like that's, like, terrible and, like, devastating, obviously. But I didn't really think too much more into it until, like, as the week went on, more and more things about the shooting came out. And I think I was just, like, also, like, just, like, realizing and, like, remembering, like, all the other things, like, like the Asian elderly being attacked, and there's that one 19-year-old Asian guy who was I think had, like, suicidal thoughts, and he was, like, shot on, like, on the bridge. I don't know exactly, but I remember seeing an article about that too. So just, like, all these different things just, like, was, like, reoccurring in my mind. And then I was like, oh wow, like, so many things are actually happening that are just being brushed over. And, like, even myself as an Asian person, I was just, like, brushing over it myself. But the fact that, like, in social media and whatnot, it was just being brought up more, I was just starting to think, like, yeah, this is, like, serious stuff, and it's not something that should just be, like, looked over and seen so lightly, because it is so serious, and it's, like, so terrible how that happened. And I think after realizing that and, like, thinking about it, I was, like, starting to get, like, angry about it a little bit.
Yeah. Angry at the racism or more the sexism behind, because it seems like those are the two, like, kind of ulterior motives, or not ulterior motives, but driving factors, at least in a lot of people's minds, when they kind of frame this attack.
Yeah. I think for me, I think it's probably more the racism behind it, just because, like, it's almost a little bit easier, even though I am Asian and a woman, like, I should be able to, like, relate to both. I feel like right now it's a little bit easier to relate to the racism of it, just because, like, I can so, like, clearly, like, pinpoint, like, oh, they're just doing this because they're saying it in this way because he's white and these ladies are Asian. And then, like, how people are also, like, showing their support or just like saying things, like it changes based on how they're like looking at it, thinking about it. Oh, that was not very clear. But yeah, I think it's more the racism because like of course like the sexism behind it is like terrible, but I feel like at least with this situation, that's being used as a way to almost make what he did a little bit more okay. Like they're trying to say like there he had like his own like issues like his sex addiction, whatever, addiction, uh, yes, whatever, yeah, they were trying to say, like, he had a bad day or whatever, all that bull crap. Yeah, but it was just covering up the fact that, this is like a racist thing that he did, and he specifically targeted a place that has a bunch of Asians and specifically like women, so like it's kind of gray area, I guess, but I think the whole topic in general, I'm looking at more of the racist side of it rather than the sexist side, but not trying to disregard or like put lower or I don't know how to explain it. Not trying to like disregard any of the sexism or any of the hurt to women that's happening as well.
We were talking about the like bull crap. That's funny. The way that the officer, the spokesperson for the police, like phrased, like defended almost the attacker was very like. That's what made me the most mad, honestly. It seems like people just naturally just want to take sides, yeah, and it really seemed like he was on like the perpetrator's side instead of like the victims, and he seemed more empathetic, like he was trying to understand more for the victim than feeling angry for understand the shooter than feel angry for the victims, like, and that's what was like more alarming to me, because they're like, I mean, at this point I feel like it's almost not surprising the police being as biased as they are, because growing up, you think they're the law, they're the good guys, and then now it's like we're a lot more aware of how they're also people with very messed up perspectives sometimes, or just because you're a police doesn't mean you're like a better person. I guess I see how they could try and like see the shooter as a victim in his own way of his like mental issues and addictions, but even if he had addictions, like you can't justify like killing people with anything really, unless you're just like completely insane. But even then, like, I don't know, like psychopath, that kind of thing. But he seems very sane.
I feel like
too.
just because you understand or have a motive doesn't make the action of what happened like any better.
Right, yeah. Especially considering like he was trying to get rid of the temptation, but literally there's like, unless he was trying to attack every massage parlor in the world, like he would never be able to really get rid of all temptation. So it's really like he's like blaming his own like issue on other people when he just needs to like work on himself and like, yeah, overcome that.
And also, like, temptation or no temptation, he still targeted those specific spas and that gender, race, like that demographic of people. Yeah, because I feel like all the excuses that are being made of like he had a bad day, he had a sex addiction, and he just wasn't mentally in the right place. Like everyone's got something going on. Like obviously, like if something's going on, you need to get help and get things figured out. But if you're taking actions that are like hurting other people, and especially killing other people, murdering other people, like, you can't, your excuse of, like, or not excuse, but like the not knowing that there was those like mental issues, like, doesn't change what he did. Like, he still did those things. He still went and murdered those eight people, like six of who are Asian, or seven are Asian. Oh, we got to figure that out. But
6 are Asian women. I feel like 7 are Asian. No, all right.
seven are Asian and one is white.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Although, it's hard because like the whole justice system like is based off of like trying to decide not just what happened, but also like how it happened, and like that's how they give someone a just sentence, you know. But I would hate to be a judge because you'd have to see these like horrible things people do and be like somehow make sense of it, you know. It'd be so hard.
Yeah, I guess like kind of going off what you just said, like I do agree that, yeah, you should kind of figure out, I guess this might be contradicting what I said earlier, but you do have to figure out, like, what was wrong and like what created that motive. But I think, at least in this situation, like when they found out the motive, or what was going on in his mind, that should have also then showed, which to people who understand this is a racist hate crime, like, show that he was racist, he is sexist, and like all these like negative things that are adding on, that no matter like how many things that people are saying, like, oh, like you have to give him the benefit of the doubt because of this and this, there's all these other things that are popping up that are like, even if these are happening, this is very clearly like much higher priority to look at and understand and see, like, what he did was not good, and he needed help so that this wouldn't have happened.
This is a whole different topic. Actually, the same, but it's kind of on a different tangent. But like the idea of owning a gun and feeling like that's such a good idea, I don't understand people, honestly, because like if you have a problem with someone, then you can just kill them. Like that's what happens when you have a weapon that can kill people. Like that can be an option. Do you know what I mean? And it really should never be an option in my mind. I think that makes zero sense. But yeah, that's also because I'm very like anti-violence and like only in like self-defense, but like that was not an act of self-defense at all.
No, I agree with that. With like a weapon, like a gun or a knife or anything you use to hurt someone or murder someone, like, you can't take it back. But like if those weren't in possession, then maybe, if we were playing the game of like he did have all these mental things going wrong with him, like maybe if he didn't have those in his possession, then he could have gotten help, or someone could have like stopped him and like talked with him, realized what was wrong, also help him to not be a racist man. Things like that. But it's just it's so easy to just buy a gun and decide, like, I'm gonna go shoot a bunch of Asian people working in a spa. Like, it's so insane that how easy that was for him.
Right. Yeah, that is. It's scary how like vulnerable people are because of the gun laws right now. Yeah. Something that someone pointed out to me was like, maybe it's not accurate, but like from where we're from, Asians don't feel like such a big minority, or such a small minority, I mean, in that there's a lot of Asians in our area, and so it's more surprising when people are so racist towards Asian people. But then I think in some areas down south especially, like, Asians are very much the minority and looked at as outsiders and like, treated very differently than they are here. So even in the same country, it's like so different.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that because I was thinking how like, oh, I was like grew up very like lucky that I went to, I mean, we went to the same church growing up. So, like, it's Korean American church. Like, my schools had a lot of Asians, especially like Koreans. So, like, being Korean, I was surrounded by even more Koreans. And then, even all in college, there was a lot of Asians at UW, like, international or not. And so, like, I think I was very sheltered in the fact that, like, I didn't feel like I witnessed or like how to deal with a lot of like racism and things like that. But at the same time, I started thinking, is that really the case? Or was I just like, I grew up being taught about like the whole like model minority. And so like, it was like, oh, I was suppressing all of my thoughts and feelings about feeling like racism towards me because I like made it okay by, like with the idea of the model minority, like, oh, I don't have it as bad as like this other group of people, or at least I have this and I can do this.
Yeah, right. So even if you're like made fun of a little, you weren't like bullied straight up. So you're like, oh, it's not that bad. Kind of like gaslighting yourself,
Yeah,
telling
like
yourself it's not real racism, kind of thing.
yeah, because like if I really thought about it, like I could bring up a whole list of things that are racist, but like growing up, I didn't see it as racist because that's just how I was taught to deal with everything. And then there's like, yeah, like the whole other side of people where like depending on where you live in the country, like people don't have the luxury of like suppressing it and not really thinking about it in that way because the racism towards them is a lot more physical and like violent, which is like what we were talking about and like witnessing in the news right now.
Yeah. The rise in hate crimes towards Asians because of COVID has been, I mean, it's like sadly not surprising because people always.
Since like quarantine has started or just in general. um I mean, it's very apparent right now just because everything is like being spotlighted, which um I think like it's good that it's being spotlighted, but like it's like sad at the same time too because that just means like that's how bad it's gotten and finally people are like understanding or like speaking out or acknowledging the racism towards Asians because I do think since quarantine it has racism towards Asians has risen. I mean, it's not just like coincidence that it's being in the news more. Like things are it's happening more, so it's bound to be in the news a little bit more. But I think a lot of the things that are happening, like the less like physical violent things, like those are still very much like prominent. I feel like it's very like the same slash it's just like it grows as society like changes and grows. Yeah, I mean like the biggest thing where it's like a lot of people are saying, and I do agree with, is like when the president was Trump. You know, like he called it the China virus or China flu, something like that. And
Kung Flu. They're trying to be
yeah,
funny. You know,
yeah,
racism always kind of like hides behind jokes, but really the underlying like meaning behind the joke is the meaning, and specifically towards people of color. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess there are a lot of white people jokes too, but it's different when you make a joke towards someone who already in like a lower position in society than if you're like making fun of someone who's not. It's weird. There's like the whole power dynamic that makes a big difference on how jokes hit. So yeah, I forget why. Oh yeah, because Kung Flu was like supposed to be a funny way of saying it's the China virus.
but like people are just like taking it to a whole nother level. It definitely has to do with the fact that like people are still idolizing Donald Trump. But the fact that like the the person who was supposed to stand for our country and like help our country, like he set it up where like he threw the first punch kind of thing, and now like everyone is starting to think that it's okay to do that when it's not.
Yeah. Everyone who was like an expert or like the scientists and everyone was calling it COVID, but then the president was going around calling it the China virus. So it's just like, I don't know, it just goes to show that he really didn't respect like other people's opinions, or didn't really, if he didn't care, he just didn't care. But no, you're right, like that's where the whole narrative came from, or that's how people got more almost like he gave them he gave them like the kind of confidence to be able to be racist themselves, or like, oh, my president is leading in this discrimination, so it must be good, or it must be right.
And because in the like towards the beginning of when coronavirus and quarantine all happened, and when he did say all of that stuff, like there were some news articles and things in the news about like Asian people being like beat up and like abused and harassed, but that like died away really quickly. And and then like if you're not if you're not witnessing it yourself, you're obviously thinking like, oh, that probably just not happening anymore.
Right, yeah. The news is really powerful in that way.
Yeah. And so it's just like literally just hiding the fact that it's most likely, I'm pretty positive that it's been happening this entire time. And the fact that it's just like escalated is what's like, you know, it hit the tipping point, and now it's like you can't hide the fact that this is happening anymore.
Yeah, not with people having their own like way of, like, social media makes it so that the news can't control what people are consuming anymore. Yeah, I think that's like the power is back to the people in a way, because all the news outlets are controlled by different political groups, or like just businesses and things that kind of influence how they like tell their news, you know. But there's like, everyone's on social media now after this whole quarantine time, and they're able to see a more wide variety. I mean, I feel like at the same time people are also like more easily influenced by how their friends are thinking, or what their friends are seeing, because they're the ones sharing it to each other. And so it's like, it's good and bad, because social media, you only see the people that you associate with, and usually they're people who have similar views. So then, but then there's more out there in general. So if you did have like, if you did want to see how other people are like seeing things, they're different perspectives, they're all online too. And so, yeah, just last week when I was reading news articles about the shooting, there's people who are having very, like, quote unquote, like, more logical kind of, in their minds, what they thought probably was more logical takes on what happened, and being almost a devil's advocate for, like, basically contradicting how most people were seeing it. And it was like challenging. I was like, oh, it almost felt like cold, like the way they were seeing things, not giving, or basically the people who were sided with, like, the victim, yeah, and they're like getting testimonies from, like, friends that he was in, like, rehab with or whatnot, saying, oh, he wouldn't be racist, he's never racist, or like, yeah, it was, yeah, people putting out different opinions, which made it harder, but also gave me more of a, like, I could see both sides and also decide what I wanted to, basically not feel like I was just being, like, brainwashed one way or the other, you know? There's, like, different opinions, and that's a good thing in my opinion, because then you can filter through it.
I do agree. It's definitely important to kind of not just be so in your own bubble of finding information, but like searching out and kind of seeing what else is out there. But at the same time, like that could be like dangerous too, just because like how like media and other things are like portrayed, and even just like how things are like hidden and like
Yeah,
stuff. Like
straight up lies out there, fake news, like, even though that's Trump's thing, but it's, like, kind of true. There's a lot of misinformation.
yeah, and like not just that, like sometimes like, I mean, I don't want to say everyone does this, but I know like a lot of times I do this where like I'll like read like an article or like look into something, but not really think about like who wrote what I just read, or like who said what I just read, because like when I was like thinking about that more, like because it is like a race topic, like a lot of the times, like it's not coincidental or not shocking, but all the things that were, you know, racist were typically white people, and then the things that were not racist are like people of color.
Yeah, I noticed a lot more Asian journalists were writing about this topic, and I wonder if, not only because obviously they have more of a, like, personal, like, tie to it, because it like ties in with their identity, but maybe even their companies themselves are like, oh, we don't want to, like, offend people with, like, oh, like, a non-Asian perspective almost, you know what I mean? So they're like, you should cover this story, because then since you're Asian, other people will, like, I don't know, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, they wanted to try and have representation even in the journalism that was being written, so they can they can understand their audience better, almost.
Yeah, just like giving them the
Mm-hmm.
voice that they deserve.
Right, but that can also, to, like, people who are non-Asian and more skeptical, would be like, oh, it's because you're Asian, you're biased, and you only see things as racist because, or, like, you know, that whole thing. So I hate the word, like, bias, because everyone's kind of biased, you know? It's like, if you're willing to listen and, like, trust people's experiences, which most people aren't, because they're like, I don't experience it, so it must not be true, you know?
I feel like also too, it's like I've been noticing a lot more like Asian voices like speaking out, but at the same time, like I wonder like kind of like how you were saying, like you're not sure if like they are doing it because like, you know, they want their opinions or their like positions on what's going on to be like heard, or if it's like oh we everything that's going on is like, we want to show that we're not racist, so like we have Asians speaking now, because some of the things, this is kind of segueing or tangent, but some of the stuff I've been seeing on like social media or have not been seeing has been like interesting to me because like um, during the summer, like the Black Lives Matter movement, like that was very spotlighted. Um, obviously, like very much needed. Um, yeah, definitely still is. Yeah, of course, still is. But I think just during quarantine, like that during the summer, is when it was very like big, and I guess like I'm hesitant to also say like it was like the popular thing to like be talking about and displaying. And like so comparing now to that, even though like it's not something to compare because it's a totally different demographic of people, but like still a minority, both are minorities that are experiencing unacceptable racism and hate towards them. But something I was like noticing and like seeing is like the the type of support and the amount of support for the Black Lives Matter and like with what's going on like anti Asian hate and racism right now. It's like I understand it's like going to be drastically different because you know supporting like stopping racism and hate towards Asian is it's like this is I don't know, this is my first time really like witnessing or feeling like it's prominent and it's being like actually something spotlighted. But this is a very long tangent, but I just like noticed like for example like influencers like YouTubers and like people on the internet, like to see like which people are like posting on their Instagrams or like their stories of like in showing their support, like different articles and things to say about what's going on right now. Like there's a it's kind of interesting but not so shocking to see that a lot of them aren't doing it. But when during the summer during Black Lives Matter, when that was very spotlighted and prominent, like everyone was doing it.
Right. Yeah.
That was my very long tangent to get to that.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
I feel it. I see. I think versus like George Floyd's case where it was very blatantly like unjust, and there's a whole video and like people were protesting on the streets for like months because of it. It was almost like it was a I don't want to say like worse because definitely I think it was just more alarming in that it was the police that did that. Whereas in this case it's like people can just excuse it, like, oh yeah, crazy white men shooters, like that happens, and they're not seeing it from a race lens or a gender critical lens. They're just kind of like yeah, people are crazy basically, and then kind of that's why they're not as inflamed about it, or because I guess they don't really see it in the same way. Whereas in the summer, like you couldn't not see it in that way, or like at least from my perspective, it's like it was very like black and white. Like it was very unjust, and yeah, people were mad. But yeah, I think I've noticed too, mostly the people who are speaking out about Asian hate are Asians themselves and some allies who are already like very activist minded, so they always see things with that critical race kind of lens, and so they're able to see it more easily, how or why it's a racial issue and not just mental issue, or like even just like a gun issue too.
I also think it's like because I definitely don't want to like put down like Black Lives Matter, everything that happened over the summer, like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, like all of those things, like where's a lot of those things are still being fought for like right now. And I don't want to disregard that, dismiss any of that, because it's very important. But I guess like, well, something that it made me think about is like, growing up, we are taught, like even in school, like racism is bad, black versus white, like that's bad, um a lot of like videos and articles I hear, I've been hearing or like reading, it's like talking about, like in the history books, it's like, slavery, and from there, like civil rights, moving forward and forward, all these things are happening, but it's like, but things still haven't changed. It looks a little bit different, but when you take off your rose color lenses or whatever, like racism is still there. But we've learned to like see racism, like pinpoint and find racism when it's like against a black person. But because we've been so like, as an Asian, like it's like hard to like understand, like yes, it's so important, and I don't want to like make any of like, black people like feel like I'm not supporting them or not there for them, like being an ally towards them. But it's like this race, like racism towards Asians, are like, have been happening the entire time as well, but we never learned how to see that and, stop it, and like pinpoint when these things are happening, how to address it. And so I think like right now, like I guess it makes sense that right now a lot of people are trying to address it in the same way we address like racism and hate towards black people. But it's like, I feel like it probably has to look different because it's a different group of people. But it's like, how do you do that without making like the other group of people feel like we're trying to take their spotlight, if that makes sense?
No, yeah, that makes sense. Racism definitely doesn't look the same for like Asians versus black people. And
I just said a lot.
yeah, no. I hear it, and it makes sense. I just feel like for us, not trying to minimize our struggle, but like we don't face the same like systemic racism as black people. It's like still really bad discrimination, and it led to this like shooting too. Like it can still result in a lot of violence, but like the wrong done, and that's continually done towards black people, makes it so that it's hard to almost be like, it feels almost like we are like, that's why I think it's important not to like compare the struggles, but or like rank them almost, because there's like a whole lot of things that like the world at large needs to work on. You can't just like prioritize only one cause over all the rest and say this is the most important. But definitely Asians have not had a very loud voice until now, which is partly why it's easier to ignore people who aren't complaining, or not complaining, but like speaking out, and for like our culture is just all about being docile and not making a lot of noise, or like and it's interesting to me, oops, sorry, I just hit my mic. It's interesting to me that people are just, I don't know, the climate feels like it's changing in a way. And I like the change, honestly. I like that we're not just cooperative model minority Asians anymore, and people are like, I don't know, willing to speak out against their oppressors, even if those oppressors are also the ones who, gave them opportunity too, because a lot of Asians immigrated here, yeah, out of their own free will. And that's also the difference in like the racial struggles. It's like our families came here for opportunity, and that's why they're willing to like undergo so much like hardship and like racism. Almost they like willingly came into this space knowing it'd be like they'd be treated that way.
Yeah,
almost.
it's like to a certain degree, like it was a choice to come here, whereas like for Black people,
Right.
it wasn't a choice for them.
Yeah, and that's also why Asians are usually more like able to just like not rebellious almost against it, because it's like they just see it as another part of the sacrifice that they're making for their like future kids and grandchildren and yeah. So that history is like really important too, to seeing how we ended up where we are. Like we're all racialized and like treated differently, but how we react to it is very different because of the history, and also like the degrees of how it plays out are also very different. Like Asians aren't seen as like a threat, you know what I mean? The same as Black people. They're seen as more of like, actually threat, and like what I mean by threat is like physically. They're usually like attacked because they're weak. That's why I'm guessing that's why so many elderly people are being attacked too.
Actually, like while you were talking, I was like thinking like if you didn't know a person, I feel like generally like your first racist thought would be like for a Black person, like more commonly people are racist toward them just by off of their appearance. Like that's when the first like instance of racism would occur. But then like an Asian person, I feel like that would most likely happen once you hear them talk, or if they talk, like your first interaction with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
because of like the accent.
Yeah,
and
like
things
do they
like
have
that.
an accent? Like can you understand them? Like I think that definitely changes like, all right, not changes. I guess that kind of makes the reason why with like Black people, like because a lot of people, like you were saying, that they're seen more as a threat, but then Asian people, it's like they're more like quiet, and I think it's like it became easier for Asian people to hide under like the whole model minority and everything, because it's like, oh, if I just don't say anything, don't like make myself like notice, then I can just get through and like just keep working hard and trying to attain this American dream. But for like a Black person, it's like they feel like they'll always be visibly seen because racism towards them happens more because of the color of their skin, and just seeing them creates a threat to people who are racist.
I see. Like we're all othered in different ways, but it's like the different ways are pretty different, and they really affect how we're treated, you know? Yeah. I feel like we can talk about this forever.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big topic. Like
It is.
we're just honestly, I feel like we're just hitting surface, but it feels like we're doing talking about a lot.
The more I talk about it, the more I feel like I have so much to learn about it, you know? Like I'm just like, oh, I don't really know for sure. But at the same time, history was not my strong suit. So like these things that I learned, usually just the facts and things, I usually just like can't remember off the top of my head. But then like the general impressions or like the conclusions I get from like hearing these facts are usually what I remember. But yeah.
Actually, I remember I hated learning history in school. Like, it was my least favorite subject, but now as an adult, and especially all of these things happening, I'm like, why didn't I pay more attention? Like, I wish I had learned more. But then at the same time, it's like, but would I have learned like all of like everything I needed slash wanted to learn? Because like so much of history like brushes over all of these important things, and it's written in the perspective of a white person, you know?
Yeah, it's very Eurocentric, where that's probably why it wasn't very interesting to either of us. I think history, like a few courses I took in college were like super eye opening, because you learn all these like lesser known narratives, and like, I don't know, basically people who don't have power are able to speak up or like have their voices heard more, versus just like regular schooling where like you have to have money to make those textbooks. Who has money? People empowered. So basically they decide what's written. They're not going to write bad things about themselves. But anyway, history is called his story for a reason. His meaning the white man. Yeah.
Hope you are enjoying the podcast so far. Sorry for all the audio issues. We will do our best to fix it for the next one. For now, make sure to like, comment, rate, and subscribe. Back to SABcast.
Okay, so we were gonna go through kind of what it was like growing up, being an Asian American. And I guess I was gonna start. So, I guess obviously, I shouldn't say obviously because it's not obvious for everyone, but for me, being Korean American, like my parents, came from Korea when they were in their late teens. But yeah, so they came with their families, and they actually, oh, I don't know if you can hear Buddy, but they came and they went to Ohio. So they were in the middle of the mid east, yeah, of the United States. Um, but yeah,
Is it called
so
not the
they're
Midwest?
Midwest.
I don't know.
It's called the Midwest. Why did I say Midwest? I think it's on
well,
the east side.
no, it is. Yeah. But for some reason they call it the
They call it
Midwest.
the
I don't know why.
Midwest. Why would they do that? Huh. I didn't think about that. But yeah, so they were in Ohio, and so like as actually especially during quarantine, I've tried to like ask my parents like what kind of like racism and things that like they have dealt with. They would like say like, yeah, we like, we were discriminated against and all these things, but their go-to was constantly but we're here now, and like focus on the good, like keep moving forward kind of talk, which I think, like first generation Korean is very like work hard, get a good job, be successful. That's the goal. So like any like hardship and things that happen, like it's just all a part of, pushing you forward and making you a better person. That's my very fast way of explaining that. By the time I was born, they were in Washington, like a little bit more liberal here, and my dad was working at Boeing for, many years before I was born. Like my mom had gone to college for art college, and my dad was in and out of some community colleges, and uh, my siblings were already in elementary school, middle school, like high school age. So English and like understanding America was kind of established by the time I was born. For me, and maybe for a lot of Asian Americans, like my first experience of like understanding like I'm not like I'm different was like going into school, because that's when you like actually are outside of your family, and you're like seeing other types of people, and other types of people are interacting with you. So I think like going into like elementary school, like I never really thought that it was weird that I was like Asian, or it was like different being Asian. But now thinking about it, like there's a lot of different things that that stand out. Like for example, like in elementary school, anytime there was a new Korean kid coming from Korea, like they would always get stuck with me. Like I'd have to show them around, and they'd be in my class, and like the teacher would be like, "Oh, you to be their friend." And like, as a little kid, it's like, okay, I'll be their friend. But now thinking about it, it's like I didn't even really know that much Korean. Like probably had a hard time myself interacting with, this new kid who came from Korea, and like, you know, we look alike, but our experiences are very different. And you know, these white teachers and adults are expecting me to just like help this new like little girl or boy figure out this whole new like strange place, which I'm still figuring it out too.
Like, it was good intentions of them, but still kind of like just grouping the two Asians together.
Yeah, and so I was always thinking like, what would they do if I wasn't there, you know? At the time I didn't think about it, but thinking about it now, like that was probably like one of the first times where it's like, oh, it's not like racist, but it's definitely pinpointing the fact that I am Asian, and so it's like, oh, just stick all the Asians together, and she's bound to know how to speak Korean. She's bound to know how to communicate and help this other kid figure out how to get things to work. But yeah, going to school, like, you know, you get your like little school ID, and I remember like we had like computer lab, and my thing would always say Kim, comma Sabrina Poha. But some of the people, like, they didn't have their middle name on there. It was just like, I don't know, random name, John Smith, Smith, comma John, like, you know, just like random like that. And so I was always like, why do they include like my middle name on everything? Not understanding that like I was like already becoming like embarrassed of my middle name. Yeah, this is like, I think this is like something that carries with me, because like I would never want to show anyone my card, but everyone was like so excited to have an ID card, because we take it to the computer lab and you would have to type in your number. I remember my number, 151 551, something like that. I think that was my number. It was like a lot of fives. But so we'd have like all these numbers and do all these things. But like people like wanted to see my car, and they're like, oh, like why don't you want to show? And I was like, oh, like I don't want people to see my middle name. They're like, what is your middle name? And everyone's like saying all their middle names, and it's like Marie or like Evelyn, or just like you know, like names that like, you know, it just like goes with their name. It's another English name. But it like, I was like, I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to share it, because I didn't want people to think it was weird, or like laugh at it, or like be like, what is that? How do you say that? Like, I don't understand what that is, you know? And like, other thing is like, even for myself, like I felt like I don't even know if I know how to say my own like middle name, like Korean name, because like I wasn't like confident in my own Korean.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah, and so I think that was one of the biggest things like going through school, was like my middle name was posted on everything. Even like to this day, like my middle name is like always Sabrina Poha Kim, or Kim, comma Sabrina Poha. It was always on there. And like I would get excited when it wasn't on there. I'd be like, oh wow, they didn't put my middle name. Like, wow. But but I don't know, just like thinking about it now, I was like, I don't know why I was like so embarrassed or so upset by it, because like I shouldn't be upset about like what my name is. Like my parents gave me that name. It's supposed to, like, it has special meaning and everything, but you know, because people don't normally give the time of day to learn how to accurately pronounce Asian names, like you automatically are like wanting to hide it or change it. Like my parents' names, like they're they don't have American names or English names. It's like Myung and Sukja. But whenever they like meet like new neighbors or other people, like I remember like even before they would do it, I would do it for them. I was like, oh, this is my dad. You can call him Mike. This is my mom. You can call her Sue. Like we don't really do that much anymore. But when I was younger, that's how we would introduce my parents
Right.
to other people.
Yeah, kind of Americanize it, make it more easy for them to say and remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and like if you just like took a couple seconds to like try like Myung, Sukja, like those aren't very like difficult names to
Yeah, they're
say.
kind of
It's
short
just-
too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like not usual names for the English language, or for America.
Yeah, just white people, non-Asians,
Yeah.
let's say.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that was like another thing. I think other than that though, like I was like saying like the beginning of the whole like podcast, like I grew up like not really learning or knowing how to see like racist things that were happening. Like obviously like you have people who like do like the eye thing, that's like racist where it's like the Chinese, Japanese, Korean, like they would do that. So like things like that would happen a lot, like jokes and just things like inappropriate things like people would do. Like I kind of like went over my head because I never obviously like I didn't take it seriously, nor did were we ever taught was I ever taught like how to handle that. Like if someone's making a joke about that's kind of about you but not exactly directed towards you, like you don't want to be the party pooper. Like you just like
Right, that's the problem with joking, like, and saying racist or sexist things, because it's supposed to be for fun, so then to call people out for those things, or like, makes you seem like just like can't take a joke or can't have a good time.
and then it's also easy to say like the kid on the other end, like, you know, they don't fully know what they're doing either. I mean, to some degree they probably do or did, but like those are like the thoughts that happen in your head. Yeah. You like give them the benefit of the doubt, but yeah. I think because I grew up just like not learning how to see that or handle that, a lot of things that were probably definitely racist just kind of went over my head. And it wasn't really until like I went into college is when I was like actually like seeing a lot more of the outcome and impact of that like come to like surface.
Right. I think the majors that you did, I was gonna say the majors that you did in college also were more like white, so that can also be why there was more, like you had more of the white view on you, versus if you're in like one of the stems, like you'd also feel like, I don't know.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah,
yeah,
dance and education,
majority.
like there wasn't a lot. Like people who are actually in the major, there wasn't a lot of Asians. There were some, but like they're all different backgrounds and actually surprisingly at UW, there's a lot of like international students who at least take the dance classes. I was actually a little surprised by the number of international students that would take the classes. But then that also like made me think like, oh, I don't want to be just seen as like, oh, because she's Asian, she's probably an international student just taking this course just to get the course, you know? And then I don't want to see international students as just as that either.
I see. There's pressure both ways, like to not fit the stereotype, but also to not like use the stereotype on other people either, kind of thing.
Yeah. The biggest thing I just keep thinking about is like I never really learned how to speak up for like speak up for myself or other people when they're like dealing with racism towards them and if they're Asian, you know? Like even towards other minority groups, like I fully don't know like what to do, what to say, or like how to support and react. But like being a minority ourselves, like I feel like I should know how to stand up for myself, but I don't, you know?
I think that has to do with our background also being surrounded by white people too growing up. Like we kind of, our position was to not, like if we wanted to have friends we couldn't be offended by people around us, even if they were making like mean jokes about our race. You just had to laugh it off, or else we legit just wouldn't have as much friends or get along. And that's kind of, at least that's for me, how I was raised, to try and just get along with everyone. Yeah, so I feel like we almost like had to identify with, okay, I say we, but I mean myself at least, because I was definitely raised around a lot of white people, identify with their kind of perspective of like color blindness, you know what I mean, where they don't have to experience racism, and or at least they only get like half privilege. There's like white privilege, but there's also like Asian privilege. And I think I grew up with a lot of Asian privilege, in that I didn't face a lot of discrimination, and I didn't feel the need to, stand up for myself, because I just, like, for the most part, was pretty accepted by white people around me. Yeah. And that's why it's more alarming when actual, like, racist things do happen, because then it kind of, like, shakes my, like, hateful crimes towards Asian people do happen, because then it reminds me that I'm, like, Asian almost, and treated differently than white people, because my experience was, like, treated the same, basically. At least that's how I saw it growing up. Yeah.
Not a minority makes you think that you grew up
Right,
the same,
yeah.
but you realize it's different.
A lot of what you said, I would also echo and say I experienced similar, like, kind of awkward feelings towards my Korean identity, like, almost feeling like I needed to hide it because of my surroundings. But then there's also times, because we were in a Korean church, and there were times where I would, like, almost code switch, is that what it's called? You know, where you, like, change and I acted more Korean in front of, like, my Korean friends or, like, Korean family, you know? And even, like, people who I knew were from Korea, I would be more confident about saying, oh yeah, my Korean name is this, you know, like, instead of, like, oh yeah, my middle name, it's hard to pronounce, you know, but it's this, like the way I, like, even presented my name, which is, like, symbolic of myself, was, like, more proud to be Korean in front of other Koreans, because I knew that I would be, well, like, they would be happy with that identity, like, that's what, like, we connected on, versus me, like, not being as proud, or just kind of being like, oh yeah, this is also a part of me, but, like, it's not what, like, connected me to a lot of my friends growing up, at least at school. So I didn't really focus on that, or I tried to, like, minimize my other identity almost, because I knew that it wouldn't really resonate with them or help me get, like, build relationships there, you know, which is kind of too bad, because, like, I think people should be able to be proud of their differences, but we're taught to, like, just assimilate and, like, try not to bring attention to how we're different, so that we can be accepted easier. Yeah. Sometimes people tell me I have an Asian accent, and I'm like, what? But that's, like, always, like, white people who say that, and then Korean people usually say I have a very, like, Kyopo accent, where it's, like, Korean American, you know. Yeah. And then both ways, when I have an accent to them, I'm like, oh darn, like, or I want to sound like native to both Korea and here, America. Like, I want to be able to be both, but I'm really, like, neither, you know. Or at times I feel like neither. So that was, like, hard growing up, feeling like there was no, like, I don't know, Korean American wasn't, like, really an identity to me. It was just, like, American or Korean, and I wasn't either, you know. But now I've accepted the middle space, and I'm, like, proud to be able to be kind of in both and not in both at the same time, because then you can kind of you have more options, I guess, on how you want to present yourself. Yeah. The middle space.
Do you feel like because for me, I have just sisters, so I mean, I don't want to assume, but I would guess that my sisters, like, experiences are somewhat similar, other than the fact that since they're older, there's probably like more blatant racism towards them because, as time progresses, it's not as blatant. But or I don't want to say that for sure because some things have not changed. But for you, because you have brothers, like, do you think that, like, how racism has been towards them versus you, like, it was like pretty different, or anything that like you've noticed growing up?
Not too much.
It's like a gender thing, maybe, like,
Yeah.
because they're
It's
men
also,
or
yeah,
boys, they're more accepted.
maybe. It's an interesting topic that, like, the even though we're all Asians, but how guys and girls are treated differently, and also how they usually like engage in the world are different. Like, me and my brother were talking about this after the shooting, how we noticed there's like a lot more like women activists, Asian activists out there, at least more popular than like male activists, or if they are activists, it's usually in addition to them being like an actor or a singer. Like, they're already famous for something else, and then they also do activism. But there's a lot more like females that are just solely like activists, and naturally because they're activists, they like write books and stuff. But like their whole like passion is for like social justice and stuff. So I was like, huh, that's so weird. Like, I mean, I'm like, makes me like proud to be an Asian woman, because I think that's awesome. But it makes me wonder, and then, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying it's definitely like changing from how Asian women were seen, or to some degree are still seen as.
I wonder if it's because of that too, though. Because Asian men were like emasculated, and always like there's that whole running joke of like having small area down there. But like female women or Asian women are also very like disrespected, and like eroticized, or what's the word? Sexualized, exoticized. Like, they're like, yeah, oh, you're so exciting because you're Asian. It's like, excuse me, like they're made to seem more like, I don't know, interesting because it's like an other like kind of like conquest. I don't know.
Like,
Anyway,
I don't think yellow fever is necessarily towards Asian men. It's
right?
geared towards
Yeah,
Asian
yeah,
women.
and yeah, there's that whole thing, and so Asian men weren't given that negative, or they were, but not to the same extent as Asian women, the negative attention, and so they had less to fight against, so they can just kind of focus on like what their parents told them to do, like achieving and being, yeah. My brother was saying he thinks it's because they're taught to be less emotional, and thus they just like literally just care less than the Asian woman,
Yeah.
about like
Or
social
they just
issues
can't
and
express
causes.
as well.
Yeah, that too.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like I was not very cognizant of my race, or just, race in general, and how it really played out in society. I was just very sheltered, privileged, sheltered, and once I got into college and really saw like the inequities and how bad things are or unfair for certain people, it made me just like question everything basically. And yeah, it's easy to just kind of coast though, but that's the easy life is never the right one. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I definitely agree. Like, in college, like, I feel very lucky that I was able to take the courses that I did that taught me about like diversity, and just like opened my eyes to a lot of the things that should not have happened, or are happening that are bad and whatnot. Like, I mean, it's unfortunate that all those things are happening, and like, I wish I didn't have to see it and like see such understand that those things are happening. But it's good, and I wish I was able to have the chance to learn it when I was like younger, because then my life and the way I treated myself and other people around me could have been so different. But
Yeah. It's not too late.
yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
23 years young.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's gonna take a long time to unlearn all the subliminal messages of like submission and things that I was taught. But I was also taught that like people are always able to grow and like change, so that's the uplifting thing.
Obviously, there's so much more that we could talk about. This is the topic of race and just, everything that's going on is, it's a very deep, big topic, so it can't be done in 2 hours. So, and hopefully we are able to keep talking about it, whether it's like in the podcast or not, because I think it's important. It was like nice to hear your thoughts and your experiences too, because
Yeah, same. It's good to know that like there's people who can relate, and kind of like, remember John Doe Chen's class, like we're all in this together, even if it may seem, I mean, for us we're very similar, but with other people who are very different, it may seem like you're on opposite ends of the field, but it's like we all inherited this system and working through how to change it and be better, no blame, no shame, no guilt is what he would say, and I really vibe with that. So yeah, being open about however we feel and not feeling judgment is the biggest thing. Like constructive criticism is always welcome, of course, but like judgment, condemnation, that like doesn't help anyone. Just discourages conversations that are gonna help people.
as we get ready to go, I just wanted to say some different ways that you can be a part of being a part of this positive change. I mean, similarly to how when the Black Lives Matter movement was being very like spotlighted and prominent in the summer, there's a lot of like people advocating and creating different spaces and sources to be a part of the anti Asian hate and racism movement that's going on. Just figure out different ways that you can just be a part of positive change and being supportive and an ally to the Asian community. I just screenshotted some things from my Instagram that like I thought were good. So here are some points. The first one is just like educate yourself, your friends, family, and like other people on the issues and the things that Asian Americans are having to face, and just also educating and getting rid of the idea of they're not the model minority. Like racism is real, it's happening, they're being discriminated against, so many things are happening. So there's a bunch of like books and articles and people you can follow and learn from. Being an informed bystander, so just when you see something happening that's obviously not right, don't just ignore it. Like say something, help that person.
There's a lot of stories of people who faced discrimination like this past year, but other people around were just kind of like didn't react or didn't defend them. It was in public spaces.
Yeah.
So that's
like,
probably what was worse.
Yeah. And like because like not to generalize, but a lot of the people who are being like harassed, like the elderly, like they probably don't speak English as well. Like the viral video that is going around right now is like that Asian woman who she was like beat up by this like random white guy, and then she was defending herself. She like found like a stick or something and was like defending herself, and he was the one who like ended up in the stretcher being taken care of by the paramedics, and the police are like telling her to calm down and whatnot. But a lot of the times they don't understand what the people are saying, because speak a different language, when she was just trying to tell them, like, he was harassing me, he was like attacking me for no reason. Like, she was crying and then like so much like pain, but all that they hear is like, what is she saying? What is this like nonsense? Because they don't understand the language. So even if you don't fully understand what's going on, if you see someone getting hurt, like, be there for them, help them. You like report it to, like, any kind of hate crime, like, report it, make sure it's known, so it's people can be more aware and stop things like this from happening. There's a bunch of different, especially with like the Atlanta shooting, the shooting of the 8 people in the spa, the 7 Asian people and the 1 white person. There's a lot of GoFundMe's going on right now. I know, like, one of the ladies who died, her 2 sons have like a GoFundMe because they need to figure out like their living situation now that their mom is gone and has passed.
Yeah, I saw it was like over 2 million.
Yeah,
2 days ago.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's like that, and
a lot of support.
There was another one, I forgot what it was for, but there's like a lot of GoFundMe's and like a lot of organizations that help support these causes and prevent these things to donate to. So make sure you're researching where you're donating to. Obviously, don't want to just donate somewhere random, but that's a great way to help.
There's out there, but yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
If you feel like you can't do anything yourself for whatever reason, like, you can at least support those who are working and fighting for justice. Yeah.
And if you can't donate, another great thing to do is just reaching out to your friends, families, or even like coworkers, acquaintances that you know who are Asian, and just like letting them know that you're there for them. I had one of my coworkers just like randomly say that to me the other day, and I was just like, well, one, it made it more real because I was like, oh wow, like, if she, like, this white old woman is like saying this to me, like, more people are understanding and like realizing what's going on. And like, I was like, wow, it was a little scary because I was like, wow, this is real now, but it did make me feel a little safe and secure knowing that like people are like watching out for me too.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, just because the topic of our podcast for today, even though it's our first podcast, was a lot we said. Just wanted to get that out there because I think it's important for it to be heard. Yeah, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, whatever you're doing for the podcast, so you can kind of join us in more conversations. Yeah, show the support, also to us, your fellow Asian women here together. But yeah, thank you for listening. I guess we wanted to end each podcast with a quote. And so I have another screenshot. This is someone else's quote I saw on Instagram. It says, "It's not just stop Asian hate, it's celebrate Asian joy. It's uplift Asian artists, it's support Asian businesses, it's protect Asian communities, it's recognize Asian accomplishments."
It's very affirming, like the best way to fight hate is with love. So like, instead of just saying stop, I was also thinking stop Asian hate is so like hard to enact, instead of like just like, but yeah, just defending your Asian brothers and sisters out there, and yeah, showing support and love is a way to stop the hate too.
I guess that leads us to the end of our podcast. So thank you for watching and listening, and we will see you in the next podcast.
Woo!
Bye.
Welcome to SABcast the PODcast.